was like a knock, knock at my door. I was like, oh, I need to do that. I think sometimes we don't realize that it is the time to just walk through the door. Like sometimes doors are closed, right? Oh, that opportunity is not there anymore. But this one like reopened and I was like, oh, okay, they really do come back around when you're kind of ready for it. Maybe I wasn't ready for it 5 years ago, which is probably the truth because I had just discovered the music. And I think there's something to be said about embodying more of that artist identity to then even feel that worthiness of claiming the dream.
Welcome back to Second Verse, where indie artists rediscover the dreams they buried, the creativity they thought they lost, and the community they didn't know they needed. I'm your host, Becky Boyland, artist, songwriter, and guide for indie creatives who are finding their second verse in life and music. Today's guest is someone who embodies that journey beautifully. Adriana Douglas is a music artist and creative guide who walked away from a 10-year corporate career to reclaim the dream she first had as a toddler. Being a singer like those she watched standing in front of the TV with her karaoke machine, convinced she was already part of the artist community. Her mission now? To empower people to choose themselves, to become the creative directors of their lives, and to embrace the truth that you're allowed to pivot, reinvent, and start again at any point in your story. She believes life is your playground, where you get to dream it, do it, and trust yourself enough to see it through. Today, we talk about the moment the door swung open again for her creativity, how the book The Artist's Way unlocked lyrics she didn't know she had, her move to Nashville, and what it looks like to build a life and career that's aligned with your spirit, not just your resume. It's honest, energizing, and full of those, oh wow, me too moments I know our second verse community lives for. Let's jump in. Welcome, Adriana. I'm so glad to have you today on Second Verse.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have found you in your podcast.
I just love getting to know, new artists that are in similar spaces and similar stories, I think, from what I gather to what I've experienced. But I always love starting everybody with, tell me your origin story. When did you first fall in love with music?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a little toddler. I was just a little. I always wanted to be a singer when I was younger. And I was always like so excited for all of the award shows. Like I felt like I was showing up like as if these people were my pals back before social media existed, always ready to be a part of the artist community. And it really kind of disappeared from my life for a very long time. Like I went through middle school, high school, following a pretty conventional track, going to college, getting a business degree, going into a corporate environment and really losing sight of artistry and creativity, like pretty much altogether. Of course, daily life had creativity here and there, but it was never like a focal point. And so that was the origin. And then there was the rediscovery.
And do you think that because of the way that the music industry was at that time, that it felt like if I can't do this thing that is going to take me to these big award shows, then I probably just have to move on and do something else?
That's so interesting. I think I was too young to have like a conscious thought like that. But I think in the re-entry point back into music, and the short of it was I had done some vocal lessons I got as a birthday gift in maybe like 2017, 2018, but that didn't really go anywhere. And then I discovered the Artist Way in 2020, and that's when it all really started. But to answer your question about that, I was thinking about this last night, that when I got back into music, I think I didn't really maybe believe it was possible. That even though I had rediscovered creativity, like, could I really do it though? Like, is it a pipe dream? Like, is this legit, or is this kind of like wishful thinking?
Oh yeah, totally. And that actually is really interesting, going off of a previous episode I recorded that isn't even out yet as of our conversation, but almost this holding things a little bit more lightly actually helps us get more excited about the artistry and what we can really bring out of it. But I don't want to go too far down the road, because I want to talk about, of course, what a great thing it is now that you are coming back to music and what this journey looks like and how you got to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we're diving into the discovery.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So, as everyone may remember, we went into a quarantine and a lockdown, and that was a moment in time where I was, as many were, forced to stop and take inventory. I was doing a lot of traveling for work prior, and I was also in an evening master's program. So I didn't have a lot of time to sit with myself or sit with my thoughts, like pretty much ever. And so, kind of toward the end of 2020, I was in this, actually, it was like a 12-week fitness program. And one of the gals had recommended The Artist Way to me. And that book kind of just finds you, I feel like, when you're ready. Now that I've heard about it more in the creative community and the people that have done it and gone through it, so I find it and I do it. And I start to uncover through the morning pages, which is that 3 pages of stream of consciousness writing. If anybody doesn't know, I really started to discover that there were a lot of stories and like lyrics coming through. And that was the surprise, because I was like, what do I do with this? Like, this is a lot. It's a lot to go from like 0 to 100 with that, where you're like, wait a second, this was all like dormant inside of me. Like, this was all just like living under the surface, and I didn't kind of realize. And so that was both like a blessing and also a shock, because at that point, I didn't realize how much emotional processing would need to also occur to like unearth this material, which was totally, in hindsight and looking back, like the perfect thing for me to be able to use music at that point in time as a way to really see how my life had been unfolding, and then be able to kind of use that as a jumping off point to actually create the music that I was going to be ready to ultimately release a few years later.
That's amazing. And I love how you say that that book finds you. I think sometimes it also comes hunting after you.
No, yes, it stalks you. It stalks you. Yeah, that's putting it kindly, was that it finds you. It doesn't leave you alone.
Yeah, because if you're like, I don't know if this is quite my thing, it will come back around, because that has been my experience, is that the first time I'm like, this is so dumb. And then it came back around and I'm like, okay, maybe I just wasn't ready.
Did you finally do it?
I'm partway through.
Yes. Yes.
But I've made more progress than I've made in the past. And part of it was, I thought for sure that I knew better how my mind worked. But it was really interesting because it really was a matter of timing, because going through it later, I'm like, oh, the things that I thought, or I had a strong opinion on the first time around, I didn't feel that way at all the second time around. And so I realized that there were just things that had to happen in my life before I was ready to dial in and deal with that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's one of those things where if you or anyone listening decides to go back, I have found that you uncover like a new creative layer, I feel like, every time. And it might not be in ways that you expect. Sometimes it's just about your day-to-day life and how you are living as a creative. Sometimes it's more fundamental, like, oh my gosh, I just wrote a screenplay, and then other times it just depends on what's going on in that phase of your life.
Yeah, for sure. And to clarify for our listeners, that if you aren't familiar with the book by Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way, it is essentially a very heavy workbook, in a way, of uncovering your creativity, and her experiences more in screenwriting, I believe, as well. And so it is for a lot of different creatives in a lot of different spaces, and definitely worth checking out. It may or may not be your bag right now, but it'll probably come back around to hunt you down and find you. So just be forewarned.
Yeah. And especially thinking about it too, because depending on who's listening, like sometimes, like, I don't know how you found it, but for me, coming from like a non-creative career, and a career where, like, yes, you could creatively problem solve, but not using like creativity in this way every day. I don't know if it's different for those that are already in a creative career and then do the book, if it feels different or not, or if it's all the same. But at least in my experience, it was very pivotal, just because I was not in that every day.
Yeah.
So it was all like new. It was all new, and like really intaking this kind of different way of thinking and living that just didn't exist for me.
Yeah. And I think popularly, we treat creativity like it only belongs in certain segments. And the reality is that those who are most successful and flexible, maybe, in various industries are those who can think creatively and try something, especially when something needs to happen. If you have to make something happen, it hasn't been done before. What other way do you get into it than through being creative and thinking creatively?
Yes. And time again, I would say even now when I'm sitting at my computer, I know better now than the days that I sit at my computer actually all day and don't move, that the minute I go outside and go for a walk and like look at the leaves or whatever, or for me, I love cooking. For some, it's not their jam, but like cook a meal that feels really creative, it just turns it on immediately.
That's awesome. So now that you've stepped back into music and you've embraced this creativity, talk about what does this season of life look like for you?
Yeah, so the season of life. So I made the move to Nashville area like about 6 months ago. And that was like one of the first things in terms of I really wanted to be around other creatives. I really wanted to be in an area that really like lived and breathed artistry, creativity, and that I felt like I was going to be in a community of like-minded people, which has indeed, I feel like, proven to be correct and accurate. I feel like there's such a generous community here. I feel like there's such kind people. I feel like everybody wants to help and everybody is in some shape or form like working towards similar goals. Doesn't have to be like everybody's trying to be a songwriter or a music artist or whatever, but like because there's so many different kinds of music careers, it has been really great to be here and kind of just soak everything in. And so I would say that what life looks like is settling into a new city, which is a whole different thing in and of itself. So everything is still kind of like a first for me, first time going to this place, first time meeting this person, first time understanding what that thing in music is about. And then the other element of this season of life is I joined an artist development program about 6 months ago. And so I have, weekly standing meetings, a bunch of homework, and that could be anything from content creation strategy to how would I develop merch to pitching the songs that I do have out for sync, like just spanning the spectrum of all the things that a music artist might do. And so in some ways, the first 6 months have been a lot of information and a lot of trial and error and a lot of like what works. Because I think the other thing too is understanding what works for you as an artist, especially on social media versus what might work for others. Because it's not really a one size fits all. Of course, there are strategies. Of course, there are kind of tried and true things that may work, but really developing what it is for you. So those I would say are like the two main things of this season of life and making new music.
Yes, absolutely. And that's really true too about social media, because we've talked a bit on this podcast about what a challenge that can be to just bring in an audience. And we're competing in a way with the noise, but we're not really competing against anything other than ourselves to some extent. And that's really important to be in that discovery phase of what actually does work for you, because if you don't resonate with it and then you task yourself with doing this forever and ever, it's just going to be miserable. It's going to be the worst thing ever.
Yes.
And you can't do something that's going to suck all the energy away from you so that you can use your creativity to make music, because that really defeats the whole purpose.
I am so like on board with that. One of the biggest things I've definitely learned over time, whether it was in corporate, after leaving corporate, or in a music career, is like energy. And whether that's like you're saying, the energy draining things or like the energizers. And also everybody's built differently and everybody has a different way to hear their intuition or, their gut feeling. But in this conversation on this topic and theme, it has been the things where, like you're saying, if you're posting something on social media, and we could give a simple example, like imagine, this is like totally made up, but imagine you're like posting carousels every day or like 10-second videos or something. And like, you really hate doing that. It's not to say, oh, social media doesn't work for me, but it's like, well, maybe you like faceless videos, or maybe you like videos with objects or something else for your brand. It's like find that anchor of the thing that like really jazzes you and gets you excited to be able to keep doing it. Cause I found myself stuck in that too, of certain moments of being like, well, I don't like doing that. Should I outsource it? And then being like, well, do I really even need that? Like, do I need to outsource it? Maybe I just don't like it. I don't need to like keep it going just because other people do it.
Yeah, totally. And It's one of those things too that I think it gets so challenging sometimes to find that space, because if you've been spending all of your hobby time on your music, I know for me that I started to forget what my other hobbies used to be. And so trying to remember, well, what are the things that I like that might then key into the kinds of things I could do on social media? And it was just such an argument in my own brain of, well, I'm being told I have to do this and I don't like this. And there must be something else that I do like, but I don't remember because I put all my energy into my hobby that I wanted to elevate into my career. And so we can really easily get wrapped up in our brains and then find that all of these things are just overwhelming. Whereas if the music is fun, then find something fun to highlight yourself and your music and your artistry. And it can all be fun. Not that it's all easy, not that fun is the only thing, but it can all still be fun.
Yeah, you just sparked like two things from sharing that. It's like one is I think something I'm really learning this year to get back to, as you said, because like I would have sometimes people, you know, you'd go on a date or you'd meet somebody that you hadn't seen in a while and they'd be like, well, what are you doing for fun these days? And because I like went from, I had a podcast, I'm doing music, like things like that, which were like more started as hobbies, trying to monetize. Like I went through a phase really of like monetizing the hobbies, right? Or like trying to monetize many areas of my creativity. And then being like, well, which ones are going to just be like, as I say, like non-extractive creativity? Like which ones are just for you? And so for me, like I really like to dance, but I would never be like needing to, I can show you how much fun I have, but I don't need to like make money from dancing or like improv. But it's like, what are those things as an artist that are going to actually fuel your artistry? And taking that like one step further, there's a song that I have not released and I wanted to, but I just didn't. It was just an era that I didn't get around to making this EP. But there was a song in there that had skateboards in the title. And I was like, oh, this would be so fun for the promo. What if I learned to like roller skate or rollerblade? I haven't rollerbladed in like 20 years. Like, what if I just bring that back? But that's bringing like the hobby into the thing. So I'm like, oh, that would be really fun. And then I just post that on social media. And that way it's like the social media doesn't feel like a chore. It doesn't feel like, what am I going to say? It doesn't feel like, how do I tell people about my music? It's like, oh, I just like learned how to rollerblade again to promo the song. And like, that's cool. People might resonate with that. And letting that be enough instead of like hiring a marketing team to create a huge campaign that you might not even like want to. I mean, that's fantastic. And I, you know, will love to use marketing firms in the future. But I'm just saying at the stage of being a new artist, it has to get even more creative than they already are to promote their work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sort of this fun discovery adventure because your audience gets to discover the things that you're rediscovering. And
Yeah.
I think that's really, really cool. And it just takes a lot of the pressure off. And I think that we're also, particularly after the last year or two of AI just getting not only so elevated, but just blown out there in front of all of us, that people are starting to get hungry already in only a couple of years, are already getting hungry for what's real. And we're quickly starting to be able to smell the stuff that's not only AI, but just super high production. And not that that's always terrible. That can be a wonderful thing. But there's just that hunger for, is this real? Did this really happen? Is this a real video? And it makes sense. We always tend to come back around. It just kind of surprised me how quickly we're already tired of it.
Yeah. And sometimes with the AI videos, like if it's like an animal or something, generally you can be like, I've been like, oh, that's fake. Like you can kind of tell. There was one the other day that was like with people, and I thought it was real. And I was like, whoa, this stuff is like, they're getting so good at the images and like, it's kind of scary.
It is.
It really is.
It is. And I think that's why as an artist, I'm just getting more and more like, I just want to keep it real and pull out my acoustic instruments. And obviously, I'm using the DAW. I'm not jettisoning it, but I have this feeling that the authenticity is really going to kind of rule the day, but I probably digress. I want to go back around also to you taking this wonderful leap to move to Nashville and talk about, a little bit more how that happened. And it's so powerful. And I think amazing things are going to happen with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sort of have over time been having like kind of more, something that I think is important for me as a human, as an artist, is like integration. And anytime like I've made a choice or experienced something, to really like kind of sit with what it's given me or brought me or taught me. And the Nashville chapter, since it's so new, is still like percolating in terms of things. But the thing I will say like is I actually had a job offer like in my corporate role, and now it's 2026. So like trying to do the math because we just changed the year. But around 5 years ago, I had a job offer in Nashville that didn't work out. And why I bring this up is because I was chatting with my mentor yesterday, and we were really chatting about like that idea of things will keep coming back around if they're meant for you. And obviously it requires you to take action, and it requires you to keep moving along toward your dreams. It's not just like you sit there and it just like appears, but just this idea of, it's kind of like you don't realize things till they're like staring you straight in the face. The opportunity, i.e. moving to Nashville from 2021 to like 2024, I visited so many US cities to be like, where should I live? Because I lived in Atlanta and I was like, I feel like completion in that city. And it's actually so underrated, I feel like. So anybody that lives in Atlanta, like Atlanta's amazing. Visit it if you haven't seen it. And I was living there, but I felt complete. I'd been like 5 years. And I was like, I kind of want to try something new. And then I moved to the DC area where I'm from, and then now Nashville. But I'd visited a lot of different cities, and I was like, which city is it? And it's kind of like when you're dating and you're like, is it this partner? Is it this part? Like, you're like, what do I like about this city? What do I like about that city? And ultimately, it was almost like nothing was ever quite right. And finally one day I saw on Instagram that one of my friends was subleasing, and I was like, oh, it was like a knock knock at my door. I was like, oh, like I need to do that. Like, here it is. Like the door just opened again. Like I need to like walk through the door. And I think sometimes we don't realize that sometimes it is the time to just walk through the door. Like sometimes doors are closed, right? You're like, oh, that opportunity is not there anymore. But this one like reopened, and I was like, oh, okay, they really do come back around. Like when you're kind of ready for it. Maybe I wasn't ready for it 5 years ago, which is probably the truth, because I had just discovered the music and I was just discovering the songwriting, and nothing was made, nothing had been released. And I think there's something to be said about embodying more of that artist identity to then even feel, I mean, for lack of a better explanation, like that worthiness of claiming the dream.
I love that. That's just so good.
Yeah.
So what an amazing journey. And I love that you're just going all in. And I think that also is a really great example for people who did have another career and are coming back. And I think sometimes we think, well, this isn't my first career. I'm not in my 20s anymore. Can I really do this kind of thing? And what I know that I've realized is I still feel like I'm in my 20s in my head. That doesn't ever really change. And so sometimes we just have to take on a little bit of amnesia and say, maybe I am in my 20s. I'm just going to do this again.
I feel like you're onto something, because I definitely have that sentiment. Sometimes I definitely don't feel like I'm in my 30s, and sometimes I forget, but in a way that like it's to, take the risks, and obviously they need to be calculated in a way. They can't just be like off the cuff, but it's entirely possible. And I think it depends on, the environments that you're in and the people you surround yourself with. At the end of the day, I think of whether that belief is going to solidify into it's not possible or it is possible. I think it has a lot to do with who you surround yourself with, where you are, and also at the end of the day, what you're telling yourself, because that's going to just keep like perpetuating a story, whether it's empowering or not. But it's not without its difficulty. I don't know about you, but like there's a lot to learn. There's a big learning curve to go into a new industry, especially if you feel like you've kind of already understood whatever industry you were in prior and spent a lot of years there. And you're like, I know the lay of the land. I kind of know the people. I know where I need to go to get what I need done. And it's kind of brand new. I
Yeah.
mean, it is brand new here. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm like, who do I talk to? Who do I need to email? What do I need to say? Is there an unspoken etiquette that I don't know about that I like, are there like secret acronyms? Just all the things. Like we had definitely in my prior industry, we had acronyms for like everything.
Yeah.
So it's like, do I know the lingo? Do I know this lingo? And how do I show up and kind of fit into this music industry, which is funny to say because like artists are supposed to stand out, but I'm like, no, how do you fit in an industry where you're supposed to stand out? Like,
Totally. Oh, that absolutely makes so much sense. And so there is sort of that, I guess, that entrepreneurial feeling that you just go in a little bit more blindly when you're younger of you have to almost take that on with the experience that you have of being in other industries and being in business and being in front of people and sort of hold that bravery alongside I have some more experience, even though this is a new thing. And it can be obviously totally worth it. And I think that maybe a little bit more of that bravery would do a lot of us a lot of good because it would just give us so much joy and
yeah.
energy. But the other really important part that you talked about was just building community around yourself. And I've been saying this lately with people of championing, and having people around you who are going to support you and lift you up and encourage you. And also not just say a bunch of words, but actually really appreciate what you do. And I think that that's what's exciting broadly in artist communities, because most of the time people are not actually competing against each other and really do want to see other people succeed because it just lifts everyone else up. And I mean, art is great.
And I think there's something to be said for this. And I would love to hear your perspective too, is that like when I was in my previous life and roles and everything, like, it was very much key performance indicator, like KPI driven, like, very much like you had very set goals, financial, strategic, operational, and that's fantastic. And also the feedback that you would get was really, I would say, obviously dependent on what business unit you were in, or maybe who your boss was. But what I've noticed, at least in music and with the people, like the environment, the community now, is I feel like people are a lot more open and honest. And I say that because I don't know if maybe I have like a preconceived idea that sometimes in the corporate it was a little more black and white in terms of feedback or succession planning of how you can climb the ladder and do something in your career. But with the artistry, I've found a lot more like truth telling, I feel like, in terms of people being like, hey, this is a blind spot. Hey, here's an opportunity of where you can grow. Hey, here's the thing, like to actually like really develop that artistry versus I think I felt a little stagnant before because I think the feedback maybe wasn't a feedback that really excited me into action. Whereas it's really important to have that community that will actually tell you the things that will help you evolve your
Yeah.
artistry and not just be like, yeah, it's great. Like you need that. And especially as a new artist, like, I mean, always as an artist, but like as a new artist, especially when you're just getting into it, like you need people to tell you and give you the feedback and then the perspective of where you can actually grow and evolve and what your strengths are in a new industry.
Yeah. And I think, like I was saying, with there not being so much of this competitive spirit, not to say there isn't, but there are so many more artists that I think because collaboration continues to be so, so important that a lot of times when they see something in someone, that it's to everyone's benefit to help that person grow, because that's someone that they want to continue to rub shoulders with, because they can see that there's someone there who may have, wonderful talent, wonderful skills and all of that, but also the big priority of just being someone that they want to be around. And so when you find people that you enjoy being around, you don't want to let that go. And so you want everyone to be elevated in that process. And I think there isn't that sense of the stakes of like, well, if I tell them and then they get better and then what happens to me? It's rather, I want to save you some of the pain because I just want to see how much faster you can get to the finish line of whatever this goal is. And it's just so different than what we've been kind of modeled for so long, as this is how you get to whatever you're aiming at in society. And the truth is that there's so much more we in the process and should be so much more we in the process. And it's so refreshing when you step into artist communities and we're all like, hey, let's all do this together. And sometimes it's mind boggling. It's like, why don't we do this everywhere?
You are hitting on something so important because it was a surprise for me. I didn't see it coming, like in the best way possible, to be like, wait, these people are like offering to help me. Like, I know it sounds so insane, but I guess in the way like, we live in the US, it's, historically been a very individualistic society. And a lot of goals are like, you're hyper independent. At least, where the background that I come from, like your performance is not based on it's based on, did you deliver on that thing? And so you become very hyper independent in a way. And like, at least I definitely had in some regard. And so for people to come in and be like, hey, like we're a team now, or like, hey, this is how we can support each other. It was mind boggling. I was like, what? And yes, it should exist more and we should normalize this. And because like that whole idea of finding the village, like for yourself and being a villager, and you also contributing and realizing the give and take of when you join a community that's very much more based in that you also need to contribute just as much in the ways that you can to support that community and make sure it's going both ways,
Yeah. So we should all be reading The Artist Way, getting creative, building community, then bring that out into the greater society. But yeah, it's so true. It's so refreshing and should not be a surprise. And yet here we are. But, that's that's how these changes get made. And that's how, especially as artists too. And I think when we've been living more in that experience of you're on your own and you better get this right, I think we don't recognize what that's done to us because of just the nature of being a creative until we get out of that and realize that, oh, that was not the best, it was not the best situation for me. And so it's interesting because it takes a while to kind of unpack that later. But yeah, you do tend to find that there's so much more value placed in the artist community on being with people who are just enjoyable to be with and cool to be with. And so there isn't an advantage to treading on anybody. In fact, that's a good way to get yourself, kind of out of situations and not be welcomed back. So being a good person and being a kind person and being a giving person, it just elevates and benefits everybody.
Totally. And also like not downplaying the gratitude that one can have and embrace for getting to hang out with cool people and do cool things when you are doing your art, because that is something that I was like craving. I definitely did not have that previously. And now it's like kind of one of those pinch me things where like, wait, I get to just like hang out with cool people, chat about life and make cool things. Like that is something to be like so grateful for, every single day of the week, and to bring more of that into your life. Because I think just like to never take that for granted, because there are definitely moments when I was like, where can I find my people and be able to, have quote unquote a work family that you really are like excited to be with every day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now, of course, we're making this sound like everything is super easy and amazing, and there are no challenges whatsoever, of course.
None.
So talk about some of the obstacles of diving into this now. And you've touched on a few, obviously, of just the move and kind of coming into this. But for someone who might be thinking, wow, this is amazing, which it is, it doesn't come without the cost of, obviously, like you said, starting in a new industry and doing something new and fresh. But what are some of the other obstacles you might have run into?
Yeah. So I think there are some that I think, I don't know, might be more, I guess, obvious than others to somebody listening, but financial can definitely be an element that we could like chat on briefly. Like there's so many narratives out there about starving artists and everything, but like coming from a well-paid job, a very secure job, benefits, all the things, and, paid time off, all of that, to then go to essentially rebuild from zero. It is something that like, you obviously have to have plans in place, and that will look different for everybody in terms of how they might sustain like a living while they're pursuing their artist career. But I think it was a perceived challenge, but now it feels so much more attainable, which is why I want to share this element, is like, there are so many ways for musicians to make money that I think once you're in it all day, every day, and you see that you could, streaming is just like one little small morsel of the pie for a new artist, right? That's just developing, and like, things with like content creation, merch, people that go on tour, obviously, like all of those things, they all can contribute to a sustainable living. And then, so I would say the challenge for me has been the decision points of which avenues do I want to go after first.
Yeah.
And also building the skill set, because like, a part of my background has also been a little bit of like a little stage fright. And so like I know various artists throughout their careers have talked about the ways that they get over that, getting on stage, or just like, remembering that they're just a person that loves music once they get on stage. So there's that element as well. So there's, like tackling the practical components of it, and then tackling the more psychological or emotional components of it that might contribute to what one would call limiting belief or procrastination, or all the things that people would talk about with artists, right? Of like, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, all those narratives. It's definitely the challenge is making the choice and trying out the different avenues and really picturing like what the career might look like, and then being able to take the necessary steps to go after it. But I would say it's been a challenge to be like, well, wait, what are all the options? And then actually feeling like there's option overload.
Yeah.
And then being like, okay, well, which ones are actually for me? Going back to like, I feel like full circle to something else we talked about is like, well, what is aligned with like you and your values and your career and how you want to live your life? Because if you don't want to be out on the road all the time, then you might want to pick a different avenue of the income generation pie, versus if you're like, oh no, I love traveling, I love this and that, and that's fine. And I'm at a stage in my life where I can do that.
Yeah. And that also is a good opportunity for people to consider that if they are solely targeted on one thing, that they need to explore that there are these other options, just so that they can have kind of a complete sustainable career, and not only choose not to do the things that they absolutely will hate, but to not just be so fixated on one thing and miss that there are other things that would be a really great complement. They don't have to necessarily replace the thing that they're pursuing that might be a little harder, but it will be a thing that will actually empower them to achieve the thing that they're looking for. And I think a lot about those, especially those who are not coming to music after another career, but trying to start out young and thinking, I just want to do this one thing, and I want to tour, and I want to be Taylor Swift. And the reality is that there are a lot of layers to get to that point, or any point even remotely close to that. But there may be a lot of things that are left alongside the road that could actually be other beneficial steps to get to a solo career. It's a little too easy sometimes to just overly focus on that one outward example of what an artist career looks like. And I know for me, for the longest time, I didn't know there were so many different ways to be a full-time musician in a lot of different industries, whether it be, directly in what we consider the music industry, but there are just a lot of different ways to use our music, throughout our lives. And that's really interesting and important to be able to get sort of a full picture of what's going on and what the options are.
Yeah. And I think something that you were mentioning, even for artists coming in maybe post college as well, right, is like, and something that I'm actively being asked by, the coaches in my artist development program too, is like, what are you willing to sacrifice? And this actually, because I think for a long time, like I also was operating under this frame of mind that like, not that I wouldn't have to sacrifice anything, like I knew there would be sacrifices, but just how much are you willing to sacrifice? Because that will also dictate when you talk about, Taylor Swift touring, versus a different avenue of career and the steps required to even get to that sort of level. It's like, well, what are you willing to do and not do? Because that's when you have to get so honest, and it can be really confronting to have those conversations with yourself. And then obviously if you have a family, with your family, of like, yeah, what am I willing to do and what am I not willing to do? And like, am I okay with that? And can I live with that choice? Or would I regret it? Or would I feel resentful? Or would I be, fulfilled? And sometimes there's a bit of trial and error where you actually truly need to like go try the thing out because you don't know. And then other times you're like, no, I definitely know myself and I know I wouldn't do that. And then the third part, which is what you were talking about, I think a little bit, was there might be things you haven't considered that people bring up to you, and you might like brush it off to be like, oh, that's not me, or like, I wouldn't do that. But like, you might actually end up really loving it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't know until we experience some things, obviously, unless it's something that is just a non-starter. But it may just be because we're so focused in on this is exactly how I want this to look. And I had an opportunity in college to be in either one ensemble or another ensemble. And I was so focused on the one ensemble that they literally came and asked me after I auditioned to be in the other ensemble. And I said no. And I didn't get in the one I wanted to either. So I missed that opportunity entirely because I was like, no, I really want to do this thing. And I just always kind of wondered, what difference that might have made. And I'm totally fine with that. It didn't work out, but it wasn't until recently. And I think just looking at where I'm headed with my artistry and what my goals and interests are, it just struck me that, oh, I had this opportunity to do something that might have shifted things a little bit. And it was just because I was really set on, no, I'm going to be in this group. And they're like, well, the group's full. So, and we actually think you'd be better over here. And I'm like,
That's so real. Like that scenario that you bring up, it to me like goes back to like what doors are open. I feel like now I'm starting to like realize that it's never going to like work if I do this, but like there are moments where you're like gripping. You're like gripping for that whatever the option is that you want. And you're like gripping and you're like, no, it's that one. And there are literally like 4 doors open next to it. And you're like, no, it's that one. People are like, no, it literally isn't. It's literally closed. And you're like, no, I'll make it open. And it's like, but there are 3 ones that you could. So it's really like you're saying, like, and you end up kind of missing the opportunity. And of course, like, kind of, a big part of my belief is the opportunities will truly come back around if you're like, in a different way. That's kind of my belief now. But it's operating from that mindset of like, okay, well, where are you holding on to something so tight that like nothing else can get in or get through to you, if you're talking about getting through to you. So that's so real, the ensemble example of just being able to look in hindsight and be like, oh, what would have happened if I'd selected differently?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be back with more after this break. Second Verse is sponsored by Attitude Creativity. Many indie music artists don't have a website that grows their audience and reflects who they are, so they get lost in the noise of streaming. Marketing and brand messaging with Attitude Creativity helps boost your brand and build a site that hits all the right notes. You want to be an artist who stands out from the crowd, and to do that, you need your music to be heard. If your website doesn't reflect who you are or make an impact, you feel like a singer who's been handed a pair of drumsticks instead of a mic. You deserve a website and brand messaging you can be proud of, and that doesn't take time away from your music. As an artist like you, I understand how overwhelming websites and marketing can be. And that's why, putting on my other creative hat, I put my decades of marketing and development experience to work for you. You'll no longer have to apologize for your website. You'll look and feel like a professional with a custom story branded website you can be proud of. And right now, you can get a head start with my free downloadable EPK blueprint and start building your electronic press kit to promote your music. Head to attitudecreativity.com/blueprint to get your copy. That's Attitude, ATTITUDE, creativity.com/blueprint. Second Verse is brought to you by Singing Straw. Oh, you caught me in the middle of a vocal warm-up. This is one of my favorite ways to wake up my vocal cords before a singing session or even a nice long conversation for the Second Verse podcast. It's the Singing Straw, a simple but powerful tool for straw phonation, a vocal technique that promotes healthy vocal cord closure in a gentle but mighty way to increase range and identify areas to work on. For me, it was key to regaining my voice after vocal cord paralysis. But you don't have to wait until a vocal injury to use it. In fact, I recommend that you don't. Make the Singing Straw part of your daily routine, and you'll be amazed what your voice can do. Check it out at secondversepod.com/singing straw. So what would be your advice for someone who is in a traditional career, and whether or not they've read The Artist Way, they've finally discovered that, I really want to try this. And is this something I should go after?
I definitely also am of the perspective and mindset that like we are all creative, like we are all artists in our own ways. I know there are a lot of people out there that will say I don't have a creative bone in my body. And I don't feel like it's true. I feel like there's always a way, like we said, whether it's problem solving at work, even if you're so technical and data heavy and, you know, are in spreadsheets all day, like there is a way that you are creatively analyzing or doing your work in a way that is working the mind in different ways and kind of using, you know, both parts of the brain. But like for me, it's really just try things. For me, it's all about trying on the life that you want to live. And it can be to varying degrees, right? If we talk about somebody that wants to go full artist and go into music, the music industry, they have to have like a true desire to want to do it, right? That's the first thing I would say is one, is it truly like a true desire? And you can only know that through like trial and error and feeling like it's something that keeps pulling you forward versus something that is really like a maybe and you can tell like you're just kind of dabbling and you're not sure. Like the advice I would say is like, if you really want it, of course, go for it. And I think the path becomes easier the more you know yourself and know your emotions and know your values and know what you stand for. I think that's when it becomes the easiest, in air quotes, to pursue this path, because it's not an easy path, but it becomes the easiest because then you're so like firm in your sense of self and you're so firm in what you believe in and know to be true that you won't be shaken around by external parties or rejection. People talk about rejection being a big part of a music artist's career and how many times they get told no. So it's like if you know yourself and you are, again, really solid, then you're going to be less shaken by the kind of things that are happening outside of you. So it's definitely more about having your own back and being able to back yourself pretty much in every scenario, any scenario that is presented to you. Like I would say those are kind of some of the key things. And knowing like in my 20s, I had some naivete. I'm like, am I saying the word right? We've had some word pronunciation challenges. The naivete that I had in my like earlier 20s, I think a little bit that everyone had my best interests at heart. It's not to say, I think in general, one should assume good intent, you know, with who they're interacting with, like assume good intent. But I think I also did not realize in careers and in the office and in life that like there are politics at play, if you will, when you are in, you know, a huge industry. There are things that go on that like you might be like, oh, they have my best interest, or I'm going to get this promotion, or I'm going to do this. But really, sometimes they're operating under the best interest of, you know, the company or the budget or what have you. And you have to really, again, know yourself and back yourself to be like advocating for yourself and what would be a good fit for you. And it has to be mutual. That's the only thing. Have your own back, but also know that there has to be this like mutual reciprocity. Like that's been a very big learning lesson for me about like, you know, give and take, and is something the right fit for me? Like at the end of the day, you can want something, right? The advice, if I tell somebody to go after the music career or go after whatever, and then they're not getting met on the other side, like it has to be a kind of mutual meeting of two parties to be able to make the career work.
That is such an excellent balance too, because we've talked about surrounding yourself with people who are going to support you. And also then having just that emotional health and growth to know that, okay, I got to stand with me when I know that this is the right thing to do. And a lot of times as artists, we're tenderhearted. We're putting all this out in front of people, and that can be a really difficult emotional challenge. But that is exactly why mental health and emotional health are so important in the process too, because you still have to be there for yourself, even if nobody else is. And those two things together of community and your own well-being have to go together for it to not just break you.
Yes, 100%. It's you're spot on, going full circle, like the community piece and you within the community, and how's the back and forth? How's the dynamic? How's the experience? You know, it's all about experience. And if your experience is really fulfilling and ultimately positive, obviously we all have bad days, but like that you're trending forward in a way that is, you know, optimal for you and your life and your well-being.
That's awesome. I'm going to be thinking about this probably for the next several days. It's just such powerful stuff, and so important both in in the music industry and in creative community, and then just out in the community at large. And so, yeah, it's wonderful to think about that and talk about it and process it. And how can people then support you and what you have coming up and find you on all the places and support your art, support your music?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have 2 singles out right now that you can stream pretty much everywhere. That is always a fantastic first way to support. Underrated, sharing and saving on socials. It goes a long way. I'm not going to play victim to the algorithm. Like, it just goes a long way. It goes a long way if you do those things. And obviously, like, genuinely, if you like it, like, don't like save it just to make me feel good. Like, if you like it. So those are genuinely things, stream, share, save, repost. I have definitely found a sweet spot and a love for TikTok right now. So I would say TikTok is probably the place where you'll find the most like aliveness in content. I am on Instagram, and I think Instagram feels, in the best way possible, I love a curation. I love aesthetics. I love beauty. And I feel like Instagram sometimes can feel a little more curated for me in terms of the posting, but I'm there too. And so those are 2 places that you'll find me. And I am releasing some new music in April. And so once that is announced soon-ish, maybe in February, the name, the everything, the content as it comes out, it would be fantastic, to pre-save it, to share, join the newsletter. I send a newsletter out maybe about once a month with just life musings, updates, what's going on. And it's probably like a little more like, if you enjoy this conversation, it's likely with topics like this. With the newsletter, it's not always like, hey, I have a new song. It's just like, hey, this is what I did recently, like for New Year's. And this is how, like, this season of life is going.
That sounds so cool. We'll have all of that in the show notes and make sure that you can follow and keep up with everything that's happening. And this has been such a great conversation. I've really enjoyed getting to know you and getting to talk to you. And thank you so much for being on Second Verse.
Oh, thank you for having me. I had so much fun. This was a blast to just be able to chat about everything, life, music, art, everything. So thank you so much for having me.
What an incredible conversation. I love how Adriana kept returning to this idea that creativity doesn't disappear, even if it goes dormant until we're ready to notice it again. She talked about how the artist's way opened the floodgates, how moving to Nashville reignited her sense of possibility, and how community can change everything when you're stepping into something new. A few things really stood out to me. First, there's her spirit of adventure, tempered by calculated risk. She's boldly following her music dream while also giving herself a soft place to land. I loved when she said, "For me, it's all about trying on the life you want to live." Next was her reminder that opportunities tend to come back around, but we still have to walk through the door. That's courage in action. And finally, her honesty about rebuilding from zero in a new industry, choosing aligned opportunities, and having her own back because great community is really important, but you still have to know yourself well as an artist. Here's your actionable takeaway this week. If you're building a brand, an artist career, or any sort of creative identity, take 10 quiet minutes to write down your non-negotiables. What energizes you? What drains you? What values guide the kind of creative life you're building? This becomes the compass for every marketing decision, every collaboration, and every brave step into your next chapter. When you know your internal story, your external story becomes so much clearer. And if this conversation inspired you, it would mean the world if you'd subscribe, follow, and leave a quick review. Every little bit really does help the show reach more artists, rediscovering their second verse. To close us out, here is Adriana's single that'll have you grooving, Dressed in Labels.
Fresh new playbill, hot off the press. I'm trying on some plus ones. Caught a glimpse glimpse of her in that dress, her overtone next to none. And I didn't expect to meet her, no, revealed her cards so quick. But I never play a gig alone or pass up a good bit. Dressed in labels, playing pretend. Change our names to the show. Poison stable, grab my attention. The red carpet was aglow. She was all of it and none of it, all wrapped into one. He was all of it and none of it, just looking for some fun. She was all of it and none of it, all wrapped into one. He was all of it and none of it, none of it. Worked the script, she couldn't tell who casted who. Don't mix up your lines. Start the skit, the character was new to you. Get the story right. Ooh, ooh. Energy, synchronicity, we were two parts of a whole. And I couldn't admit the truth until the closing credits roll. Dressed in labels, playing pretend. Change our names to the show. Poison stable, grab my attention. The red carpet was aglow. She was all of it and none of it, all wrapped into one. He was all of it and none of it, just looking for some fun. She was all of it and none of it, all wrapped into one. He was all of it and none of it, none of it. You on my mind, can't deny. Push me away, change my life. Dressed in labels, playing pretend. Change our names to the show. Poison stable, what's your intention? The red carpet was aglow. She was all of it and none of it, all wrapped into one. He was all of it and none of it, just looking for some fun. She was all of it and none of it, all wrapped into one. He was all of it